All right, 2020. There is a good chance you probably never want to think about that again. But in order to truly move on, there is one final thing we all have to take care of: our 2020 taxes. And the pandemic has led to plenty of changes that you need to be aware of.
One of those inevitables. Here to talk about those changes is Esther Gulyas, president of EG Tax. And Esther, we're glad you're here with us tonight. We're getting so many questions on this, so we want to dive right in. COVID and the government's response to it created kind of a ripple effect, and people are going to feel it this year when they sit down and try to do their taxes. So we want to start with stimulus checks, and how are those being treated?
Well, first of all, the stimulus is completely tax-free. So a lot of people think that because we ask about, did you get your stimulus, is that bad because we're going to tax it? It's not going to be taxed. But if you didn't get it, or if you got a limited stimulus, or if your situation changed this year and your income went down and maybe you didn't get as much stimulus because it phased out last year, you get to get it again. So a lot of people that might have gotten limited stimulus checks when they were getting the $1,200 or the $600 checks, they might have a second bite at the apple. So it's very important that you look at what's called the recovery exclusion, because you'll get a shot at the stimulus if it was limited. Also, big thing for your kids in college. Your kids in college, let's say that you can't take the education credit because your income's too high. You might want to let Junior do his own tax return this year, especially if he had some income, and he'll get potentially the $1,200 stimulus, the $600 stimulus, the $1,400 stimulus if it comes out, and maybe $1,000 of the refundable education credit that you couldn't get. So it means a whole lot of money for them. So it makes the whole stimulus question something that's a mathematical problem. You got to make sure that you get the most bang for your buck.
Esther, that makes me want to go back to college all of a sudden. That sounds pretty good.
Well, it's interesting because my granddaughter, she said, good, this year I'm going to get a lot of money. So,
yeah.
And that's the truth.
If you play your cards right. So the CARES Act from way back in the spring, of course, tried to help struggling businesses stay afloat with the Paycheck Protection Program, those PPP loans that we talked about so much. What do those small business owners who received those loans need to know as they're going through this?
It's remarkable. There's so many things in the tax law for small businesses. If you got the payroll protection plan, the PPP originally, and you haven't gotten it turned into a grant yet, and because you've just been sluggish on your paperwork, you only have so much time to do that. It's 10 months from the time that you had received it. So you want to make sure that you have your PPP application to have it turned from a loan into a grant. That's very important. There's also stimulus 2 right now. So there's PPP number 2. And you want to make sure that if you have less than 300 employees, that you have applied for that, because that's stimulus number 2. And the other remarkable thing, and it makes no sense under tax law that I ever knew about, but that grant for PPP money is going to not only be not taxable, but you get to use that money to pay bills, and it's deductible. So if you got a $200,000 grant, it's like getting $400,000 worth of money. It's a lot of money. And then plus there's the employee retention credit, where you could get 50% of the first $10,000 for each employee's wages. That was for 2019. So if you had 10 employees, you could have gotten $50,000 credit if you had kept the employees on. This year for 2020, that credit goes to up to $7,000 per quarter, or $14,000 per employee. So those 10 employees would be $140,000 in taxes you don't pay. That's a lot of money.
Esther, quickly, we want to ask you about so many people that have found themselves out of work in 2020. What's your advice to those who got unemployment benefits last year?
Oh, that's such a good question. That's really important. Now, unemployment is taxable. The stimulus is not. The state of New York doesn't send you out the 1099 forms, 1099 form G automatically. You have to go into the website and capture that 1099 G to put it on your tax return. Unfortunately, right now it's not available. We're hearing rumors that it might be up till February the 12th before they get those 1099 Gs out. You could also call 1-888-209-8124, 1-888-209-8124, and ask the state of New York to send you the 1099 G. But without you making that step, they're not going to send it. If they don't send it, you can mess up your tax return.
That is so important, Esther. We want to have you back on whenever that website is working to try to actually walk people through this process. But we're out of time now. Esther Gulyas is president of EG Tax. Thanks so much for your time. It's great to see you.
My pleasure.
Thanks again, Esther. We hope that you'll keep texting us your questions and your comments, 716-849-2200.